Hi, everyone. My name is Dr. John Douillard, and welcome to today's podcast, where I'm going to talk about some of the ancient wisdom and modern science of Ayurvedic cleansing here at LifeSpa.com. So, something interesting came across my desk with regard to some of the research, and it's research that I dug up many years ago, and I found a study that said that the number one cause of gallbladder disease is a low-fat or a no-fat diet. And that stuck with me for many years. And then recently, someone on some social media post asked me the question to sort of clarify that. And then I was like, yeah, this is really important to clarify. So I dug into the research and I started looking into why and is it possible that a low-fat diet could actually be the number one cause of heart disease. We should make the case that in 1960, when saturated fats were demonized and they gave us polyunsaturated vegetable oils that were highly processed, that were found to, in fact, lower cholesterol, were the promise of, lower heart disease in the future. Well, 60 years later, heart disease is higher than ever, still number one cause of death in America. And it didn't work. Being on a low-fat diet didn't actually help lower heart disease at all. But what did happen is the number one abdominal elective surgery in America is gallbladder removal surgery. So in the last 60 years, we've had a significant number of people losing their gallbladders, which may suggest that a low-fat diet may in fact be a significant risk factor for gallbladder disease. And why would that be? And let's talk about this for a minute and kind of unpack this, because I think it's really important. Let's talk about what a gallbladder does first, okay? Well, the gallbladder is a sac of bile that is generally concentrated to 15, even up to 20 times concentrate. So it's a sac of stored bile that your liver makes, and it stores it in this sac to a concentrate of about 15 to 20 times. That said, you got to ask the question, why do we need that much bile? We definitely don't need that much bile on a post-1960 low-fat diet, because we don't need any fat or very little fat because fat's been demonized. Now, I'm not necessarily suggesting that we should be eating a ketogenic diet. Don't get me wrong, I'm not suggesting by any means we should be eating a 70-80% fat diet, which is what ketogenic diets are like. I'm just making the case that not eating any fat has been linked in many studies to cause some gallbladder concerns, because that gallbladder, which is a sac of bile, stored bile, that's 15 to 20 times concentrated, has to contract to get rid of it, all that bile. And to contract to get rid of that much bile requires us to eat a significant amount of fat, the amount of fat that most of us don't eat anymore, even if you've thrown out the idea that a no-fat diet will somehow is somehow bad, and you eat good fats, avocados, and good quality olive oil, and coconut oil, and ghee, as many of my listeners believe that it's the healthy thing to do, and the fish oils and things like that, because there's a lot of really good science to suggest that those things are actually really good for you. So let's go back to the gallbladder for a second. So if you don't eat a significant amount of fat, that gallbladder might not contract. It might not empty the gallbladder. The studies show that we need about 10 grams of fat per day to contract and empty the gallbladder, which is not a significant, crazy number of fat, but it's not a low-fat diet either. It's a good, healthy amount of fat. That's what's required to get the gallbladder to contract and fully empty. But when you think of why we have a gallbladder, why we evolved to have it, one might suggest that when hunter-gatherers slowly became better hunters and used groups of humans to kill larger animals, which went extinct in short order wherever they went, elephants, mammoths, sloths, which were 7 tons in weight and 20 feet tall, when the first Americans came to America, within just 1,000 years, all of these large mammals, half of the large mammals that existed in America, camels, horses, they were gone. Horses actually are indigenous to America. And then they somehow migrated back to Europe and they survived there, but they didn't survive here because we killed them off. So when you kill a big animal like buffalo and all that, the natives were smart. They ate everything, and the stuff that would go bad really fast was the fats, the intestines and the brains and the livers and the organs and all that would go bad really fast. So they ate that first, right then and there. Boom, they had to eat it all. So it was a big time fat explosion, and that forced the gallbladder to contract. Now we did that for many thousands of years, not only in America but at least for 75,000 years. We've been committing. We were pretty darn good hunters. Is that the reason why we have such a big gallbladder that can hold such concentrated bile at that point? Is that why we're here today? I haven't seen any studies to prove that, but logically it I sort of think, that probably makes some pretty good sense why we did that. Because originally when we were 2 or 3 million years ago, we were mostly gatherers. We didn't get the hunting thing going until much, much later. 100,000 years ago-ish. So we were gatherers and therefore didn't need that much fat, because when you're gathering, where do you get enough fat to contract a gallbladder that's got 15 to 20 times concentrate in it, right? So it's possible that's the reason. Point being is we don't eat that diet anymore. The gallbladder doesn't contract and it stays congested, and what stays in the gallbladder can harden, can become a medical term called bile sludge. That bile sludge can become problematic, cause stones, and then the gallbladder starts to not function because everything in it is so thick, the gallbladder can't contract anymore. They do a HIDA scan, they find out it's not contracting, and you have, real problems like they have to remove your gallbladder. And this is sort of interesting because the gallbladder is the kingpin of digestive strength, detox strength, assimilation strength of your body. Without good bile flow, we are in big trouble. From a digestive perspective, from an assimilation perspective, from a detox perspective, bad things happen. Because bile has a handful of benefits that I want to talk about. Number one, bile is a buffer for the acid in your stomach. So if you don't have a really good bile flow, your stomach's going to be reluctant to, number one, make the acid that it's going to need to digest harder to digest proteins, like proteins in dairy and proteins in grains, anti-nutrients, wheat, all those, kind of demonized foods. Stomach will say, hey, I can't make the acid I need to cook this food properly because they don't make enough bile down there, because the liver's been either congested because we didn't eat enough fat in the diet, or the modern cause, which happened in 1960, is the introduction of polyunsaturated fatty acid, or bleach, boiled, and deodorized, to such an extent that they killed everything alive in it. So when we put it in a loaf of bread, the loaf of bread stays squishy on the shelf for a month. No bug on the planet would ever eat it, which is why the bread never goes bad. When you eat it, you put it inside of your body, the bugs inside of you won't eat it either. So where do all those bad oils go? Like all the trash goes into the liver, into the gallbladder. If you ever stuck your hand in a liver, we did that in dissection when I was in school. It's an extremely greasy place, and that's where all the grease goes. And if it's indigestible grease and your bugs won't break it down, and, have you ever seen the microbe soaps that they use now to break grease up? Well, that's sort of what's supposed to happen inside of us. But if you have grease that just won't be broken down by the bugs inside of you, it goes to your liver and gallbladder, it congests it even more so, and now you have issues with, severe gallbladder concerns. Number one abdominal surgery in America today, gallbladder surgery. That's a question that we should be asking. Why is that? And the gallbladder also is holding on to bile made by the liver. And it's a Pac-Man that cleans and gobbles up toxins and fats and junk and cleans your intestinal villi and scrubs it so you don't get leaky gut syndrome. It regulates the consistency and regularity of your stool. No bile, no poop. No bile, no stomach acid. Or the stomach acid stays in your stomach too long, something Ayurveda called udvarta, or upward moving digestion, number one cause of heartburn, indigestion, gas and bloating, burping, belching. This is all because when you ate the food, your stomach said, oh, I'm going to need some bile to emulsify the fat in the ham sandwich, in the ham. I'm going to need some bile to neutralize the acid. I'm going to need to break down the wheat in the bread. But if the liver is congested because of either years of constipation or years of a low-fat or a highly toxic fat diet, the gallbladder can't deliver that bile, so the stomach holds on to the food and the acid longer than it should. That's called gastroparesis in Western medicine. Ayurveda calls it upward moving digestion, and there comes all the signs that we have linked to occasional heartburn, reflux. It pushes up on the diaphragm, affects how your diaphragm can contract and breathe air into the lower lobes of your lungs, where all the parasympathetic rest and digest receptors live. So if your stomach is now stuck to or pushed up against the diaphragm, and the diaphragm really can't contract, you become a lousy breather. And this is super common because of the diet we've been eating for 60 years. And because you became a lousy breather, you start breathing only into the upper chest, which is where the emergency fight or flight receptors predominate. The lower lobes of your lungs, which are predominated by parasympathetic rest and digestion, rebuild and rejuvenate receptors, are not being accessed anymore. And it starts to affect how you breathe, and definitely how you breathe while you sleep. And people snore and have sleep apnea, issues that really didn't exist in early humans because we didn't have these relationships due to toxic processed food or a diet of extremely low or no fat that was promised to cure heart disease, did nothing of the sort, and left us with a gallbladder that can't be contracted any longer and is pulled out in numbers, record-breaking numbers, right? So it's sort of like a problem, which is why I write a lot of articles about this, and which is what I'm so fascinated by, is like the whole Ayurvedic cleansing thing was so interesting because they were really about using ghee or clarified butter to force a cleansing reaction. And I want to talk about that because there's some really interesting science that I think is important to understand, if you can stay with me a little bit longer. Dr. Walter Longa wrote a book called The Longevity Diet, and he wrote a fasting protocol called the Fasting Mimicking Diet, which has become very famous because his diet has been proven to actually produce stem cell activation and autophagy, which is the repair of broken parts, damaged cells, and trying to reboot and rebuild them and make them more useful again, get rid of the bad, reuse the good kind of a thing, all of which is Nobel Prize winning science. And the idea of fasting and intermittent fasting and time-restricted eating is all designed to help people get to this thing called autophagy, to get these Nobel Prize winning benefits of fasting. Well, according to the research, it shows that when you fast for long periods of time, you don't contract the gallbladder. And Dr. Longa's research said, if I put people on a fasting diet and just to get the autophagy, I could increase the risk of gallbladder concerns for them, which I thought was fascinating because that's the hard science. That if you don't contract the gallbladder with a low-fat diet, compared to the hunter-gatherers who were eating the brains and guts of a woolly mammoth in one sitting where we're fully contracting the gallbladder. They didn't eat that every day. They had this massive contraction and then a couple of weeks of grazing or whatever, gathering, and then the bile would build back up and then they would surge it out again to help metabolize all that fat, right? So something like that may have happened that could explain why we have a gallbladder that is now so commonly problematic because we don't eat that kind of fat, and the fats that we do eat, the bugs won't touch. And they end up in the gallbladder and the liver, and they create real congestive problems. And when the gallbladder gets congested, the bile ducts become thick and viscous. Everything backs up into the liver, and that causes fatty liver concerns, which is again a big, huge, major concern, almost epidemic. The bile ducts connect with the pancreatic ducts before they deliver the bile into the small intestine in 91% of the people. So when those two tubes come in together, if the bile ducts are thick and viscous with congested bile sludge, and the bile can't get into the intestinal tract to clean and scrub and break down the good and the bad fats, the pancreatic enzymes can't get through either. And that causes you to have issues with your ability to deliver your pancreatic digestive enzymes. So everybody just says, you get old, you can't make the enzymes anymore, so you need to take digestive enzymes. You get old, you don't make hydrochloric acid in your stomach anymore, so you need to take hydrochloric acid. So therefore, that's the rule. Not the rule. There's no evidence to suggest that aging does anything of the sort. The evidence suggests that when you eat a bunch of garbagey, highly processed foods that extend shelf life, not your life, they'll congest the liver and the gallbladder. They will cause an inability for the bile duct and the pancreatic ducts to deliver enzymes and bile that both help you digest the fats, the proteins, and the carbohydrates, but also both act as neutralizers or buffers for the acid in your stomach. And if they can't get there and there's no buffers for that acid, your stomach will, number one, hold on to the acid, or number two, stop producing the acid. Neither one of those are good. One causes heartburn, one causes an opportunistic invasion of all kinds of opportunistic bacteria like H. pylori to irritate your stomach, in many other ways, set you up for things like the very happy, not happy, common, prevalent SIBO, small intestine bowel overgrowth, which is a very chronic problem that people have. Again, because we lost our protection. We lost our protective barriers, the coordinated effort of your stomach producing acid, your liver producing bile, your gallbladder pumping it out, and your pancreas delivering those pancreatic enzymes, that triad, and the duodenal enzymes as well. All of that has to be coordinated. And if it isn't, bad things happen, right? So we can blame all this on, we can blame it on in 1960 when they said saturated fats were bad. But my point is that in Ayurvedic medicine, they weren't big fans of long-standing fasting. You know, if you look at Hinduism and in Hindu times, they fast a day here for spiritual reasons like they do around the world. Fasting has always been sort of more of a spiritual venture. But in India, in Ayurvedic medicine, it was sort of interesting. Fasting was very specific, only for kapha body types in the kapha season, under medical supervision, very, very specific, right? It wasn't like everybody should do 2-week fasts. Like in America today, there's best-selling books on fasting. But the first health book I ever read was Paul Bragg's Miracle of Fasting. I did massive fasting in my late teens, early 20s. But now we have science to say that when you fast, you don't contract the gallbladder, and the same thing that causes gallbladder disease, like a low-fat or a no-fat diet, fasting can also cause gallbladder disease, just like a low-fat or a no-fat diet as well. And that is sort of interesting. And I was like, wow. The Ayurvedic cleanses always use ghee or clarified butter to force the gallbladder to contract, to empty that gallbladder. So the bile was in there doing all the work of the intestinal, cleaning in the villi of your intestinal tract and supporting intestinal health and a protective barrier of your intestinal skin to protect you from things like leaky gut syndrome, right? I thought that was sort of pretty phenomenal. When Dr. Walter Longo at USC, he's a longevity researcher, did the research on his fasting mimicking diet, he did a calorie restricted diet of about 800 calories split up between fats and carbohydrates or starches. It wasn't absolutely no starch, and it wasn't absolutely no fat, and it wasn't absolutely no food. It was about 800 calories. And when I read that, I was like, wow, that's exactly pretty darn close to the Ayurvedic cleansing diets. And we have 3 of them. The Colorado Cleanse, which is our 2-week digestive reset Ayurvedic cleanse, our 4-day short home cleanse, which mimics the fasting mimicking diet very, very closely. It's just a 4-day quick ghee khichdi cleanse. And we have a new cleanse called the Kayakalpa cleanse, which is a 5-day cleanse that exactly mimics the research for stem cell activation and the autophagy benefits, right? But I was just sort of, again, here we go. I write about ancient wisdom and modern science, and I'm always fascinated by what Ayurvedic medicine knew. And they knew that we couldn't just fast people because that could cause problems with the gallbladder not contracting. The gallbladder doesn't contract. You don't pump bile, you don't clean the intestinal villi, you don't make acid, you don't regulate stools, you don't detoxify, you don't get the good fats in, all kinds of bad things happen. So they didn't do in protocols for long-term extended fasting. They did talk about intermittent fasting. A couple of old sayings in Ayurveda was 1 meal a day is for a yogi, 2 meals a day is for a bogi, which is a worker class person who needs 2 good solid meals a day to do the physical labor required. And 3 meals a day is for a rogi, which is a sick person, mostly dead in a hospital, and they don't even have a name for 4, 5, and 6 meal a day people because you're mostly dead at 3. So in my book, The 3 Season Diet, I wrote back in the year 2000, we put an ebook out based on that called the Weight Balancing ebook. We talk about time-restricted eating, intermittent fasting, as the Ayurvedic way to reset fat burning. And the plan was very simple. Number 1, 3 meals a day. Number 2, if you can do that well, shift gears to having a lighter supper, a soup or a salad. If you can do that well, shift gears to having an earlier supper, like before 6 o'clock in the evening. So now you're fasting from 6 o'clock all the way till 7 o'clock in the morning. That's 13 hours. It's one of the classic time-restricted eating patterns. And then the final step was to have no supper. 3 to 7 nights per week, working your way up when it's comfortable to go for a full 7 nights a week. If you have a nice big lunch and a nice big breakfast, nothing for dinner, you're fasting, you're locked into your circadian cycles. The studies show clearly that we should eat breakfast and lunch and a lighter dinner, even though a lot of intermittent fasters say, because it's socially easier to skip breakfast, have a lunch and a supper, and then just keep skipping breakfast. But if you really want to lock into the circadian reset of your rhythms, we would do it by turning the clocks on for digestion at the right time. You'd have a breakfast and a lunch and no dinner. That's the science-backed way of resetting your circadian clock and getting the benefits of intermittent fasting. But I get it. We want to sit down and eat with our family, and skipping breakfast can sometimes be an easier way to make longer trips. So I think in the big scheme of things, we need to eat less food, and calorie restriction is one way to do that by just skipping breakfast. And I've done that as well, and I think it's a fine way to do it. But if you're really going to lock in to doing it the right way, skip supper and do that. So that was that we wrote about back in the year 2000. That's still sort of a 16 hours of no eating and 8 hours of eating window, and that's a 16-8 kind of intermittent fasting type of eating style. That is classic Ayurveda. I mean, they even say 1 meal a day is for a yogi, 1 meal a day. 2 meals a day for a worker class person who's physically active, right? 3 meals a day, you're sick. So these are new, but really ancient concepts, right? So when you talk about cleansing and detoxifying, in Ayurveda, what you're talking about is resetting function. How do you reset function is by making sure that the gallbladder is contracted. So these cleanses were designed thousands of years ago. So they must have had gallbladder issues or fat burning issues for a long, long time, because they had starches at ancient times. And we do like starches because we got the thing for sugar, right? So we're going to want to eat more sugar and probably not be so super wonderful about eating a lot of ghee. A lot of people like ghee, but if people had a choice between ghee and, I don't know, some bread, which they had in ancient times, people generally eat bread because sugar, humans and mice both prefer sugar over cocaine even. So, I mean, we have a thing, right, for sugar, right? So it may have been a thing that even in Ayurvedic times, people were getting liver congestion and not burning fat, maybe even gaining weight. It's hard to say what it was like way back when. But they did develop cleanses using ghee and khichdi to mimic what the science today at USC says is the best way to activate stem cells in your body, rejuvenative stem cells, and autophagy in your body, which is the repair of that. How all this got started, I think, is a fascinating story. I read a book years ago about this monk who lived to be 185 years old. His name was Tapasvi, and when he got older, every 30 years ago, he went and did this thing called Kayakalpa. He had a calorie-restricted diet, sensory deprivation, ate very, very small, a little bit of food, special herbs that now we have been studied, and I've written about, can increase stem cell activation as well. And they would grow new hair, and their teeth would fall and get new teeth, and skin would fall and get new skin, and right. So no one really believes that any of that massive transformation maybe happened, because we do exaggerate over time when stories are told again and again and again, right? But when I read that book, I was like, there's got to be some truth to this, because it's pervasive in India, the idea of Kayakalpa and this total body transformation, and longevity is a branch, Rasayana is a branch of Ayurvedic medicine. They were into that, studying longevity. So then Dr. Longa, when he was at UCLA many years ago, he monitored a group of scientists that went into a biosphere and went in for 2 years and grew their own food and went in calorie restriction for 2 years, came out super skinny, not super happy. And when they came out, their organs had shrunk down to a very, very small size. And when they started eating again, their organs grew back. And the researchers looked at that and were like, the only way organs could go back to big size again is with a surge of stem cells. That's what makes us grow. So they started doing research on fruit flies and mice, and this is all written in Dr. Longa's book, The Longevity Diet, and started doing research on that and found that if you do, and then humans eventually, and he found that you could in fact mimic autophagy, the repair, rebuilding, and recycling of old parts, and stem cell activation by doing a very specific type of calorie restriction. And his specific type was about 800 calories mixed between fats and starches. It wasn't a just fasting. Fasting will give you autophagy, but the risks involved cause gallbladder disease. And Ayurveda was like, we're not going to do that. Somehow they knew that. So they gave a diet that was a blend between starches through the thing with the food called khichdi that you ate during the day, which is a rice and bean sort of gruel, with the ghee, the clarified butter, in the morning to force your gallbladder to contract. And that is the holy grail of Ayurvedic cleansing that's been involved and in place for thousands of years, backed by really good science now that I've written about, that's been published, that shows that it pulls out heavy metals and pesticides out of your deep tissues, forces your gallbladder to contract, increases the stomach acid production, turns on your digestive fire, because when you make more bile, you make more acid. When you make more bile, you break down the bad fats, deliver the good fats. When you make more bile, you poop better, because your bile regulates the consistency of your stool. And when you make more bile, you scrub your intestinal skin and you reset the protective barrier. And when you make more bile by eating ghee, clarified butter, which is the #1 most abundant source of butyric acid on the planet as a food. Butyric acid is the #1 fatty acid that your gut bugs eat. They love it. Your colon cells are energized by butyric acid. And how did they know in India thousands of years ago to use butyric acid or ghee, boil off all the milk solids, get rid of all the dairy issues, leave you with just the oil of the milk, no milk solids or dairy really in it any longer at all, just the ghee, which is the highest source of butyric acid, which is the #1 fatty acid for gut health. Boom. How did they know that? That's just the kind of stuff that blows my mind. So the ghee at certain dosages, with the khichdi, perfectly matches the fasting mimicking diet that's been proven to increase stem cell activation and the autophagy. I just think it's crazy how they knew that. And that's what our cleanses do. The Colorado cleanse that we offer is a 2-week Ayurvedic detox and digestive reset and lymph cleanse. And you can just buy our Colorado Cleanse book and follow that along on your own. It's also got a seasonal recipe guide in there. Half the book's a seasonal cookbook, which is super awesome. And twice a year we do that as a group. People come, and we have 500 to 800 people from around the world do it together. And you get emails from me every morning. You get lectures from me, question and answers from me along the way during this kind of 2-week period that we all do it together. And so I've been doing it for years. It's a phenomenal digestive reset, intestinal scrub, repair, turn your liver, gallbladder, digestive, pancreatic, gallbladder, bile flow coordination thing on that I talked about. It resets all that. And the ghee has been shown to have what's called, it's crazy, right? But it's called lipophilic mediated detoxification. So you take a fat and you have another toxic fat and you put them together, they stick to each other because they like each other. And then that ghee hooks on, sort of chelates the bad fats out of your body. And that's exactly what the science has showed. They talk about the ghee as a lipophilic, fat-liking fat, mediated detoxification process that's been shown to pull heavy metals and pesticides out of your deep tissues. Like, so how cool is that, right? While you're forcing your gallbladder to contract, making your body get rid of all the old sludge from the processed foods, and you can't avoid them. You know, we eat the best oils on the planet in my house, but you go to a restaurant, Indian restaurant, any restaurant, the oils are the cheapest they can buy. Most Italian restaurants dilute their olive oil. It's almost impossible to get really good, clean oils, and they cook all the soups and the stews and the salads and the sauces with some type of cheap oil, which is, you know, indigestible. So every once in a while, good to clean out that sludge so you don't end up with that crazy notion that just because we're a little bit older, we can't make good digestive fire. That is simply not the truth. And then therefore you need to take digestive enzymes for the rest of your life. If you want to read a controversial article, read my article called The Hidden Dangers of Digestive Enzymes. I get a lot of flack because people swear that you have to have digestive enzymes when you're older. I'm 63, absolutely don't take any digestive enzymes, but I'm into making sure my digestive system is stronger by not letting function fall. And I think we can all do that. And not only just for preventative and longevity benefits, feeling good, because remember, fats, your liver makes bile to emulsify fats, to break them down into little small particles. They can be delivered as energy into every single cell of your body. Your liver is making bile to emulsify and deliver fat as fuel. It's your baseline energy. Your carbohydrates, that's a surge of energy, but your baseline energy is fat delivered via your lymphatic system, which is another topic I won't get into today. That is really important because it's the delivery of the fats, it's the escorting of the toxic waste out of your body, and it's the carrier of your immune system. So if that system gets clogged because a bunch of bad fats and a bunch of undigested proteins clog up your lymphatic collecting ducts, you can't deliver the energy. So you're flat out exhausted. And all that fat bloats you, clogs up your lymph, gives you brain lymphatic brain fog, makes your skin-associated lymph congestion, you get rashes. All these things that people blame on wheat and dairy and bad food is not bad food, unless it's a highly processed food. But if it's a whole food and it's in season, we're wired to eat it, have the capacity to eat it. And taking it out only gives you symptomatic relief, temporary relief really only, and set yourself up for more problems down the road because your ability to digest hard to digest stuff, man, it does a couple of things. It's so important for you to be able to digest hard to digest foods because those harder to digest foods are the irritants that created our gut immunity, which is 70 to 80% of our immune system. And when you take out all the hard to digest foods, take out the wheat, take out the dairy, take out the grains, take out the nuts, take out all the lectins, the phytic acids, the oxalates, the goitrogens, the nightshades, you take all that out of the diet and eat just a simple, perfectly easy to digest food, you completely take out the reason for having an immune system. That's why we have one, is because we ate all these hard to digest sort of poisonous foods for millions of years. And science shows now when people go on a gluten-free diet, they have 4 times more mercury in their blood than people who eat wheat. People who eat a gluten-free diet, I mean, is just one example, have more, people who are gluten-free have more bad bugs, less good bugs, less killer T cells, a measure of immune strength than people who actually are eating these grains. Because they have anti-nutrients on them that we have the capacity to break down if we understand how, as ancient Ayurvedic people did, that we can reset function by doing Ayurvedic cleanses that were written thousands of years ago, using ghee and khichdi as a way to repair and rebuild and reset bile flow and bile function. And not just fast and not eat anything, which is probably okay for a lot of people, but the studies show it increases risk of gallbladder disease. And they figured that out. And now we have cleanses that mimic the Colorado cleanse, our new Kaya Kalpa cleanse, the short home cleanse, all of those. The Kaya Kalpa cleanse is a free ebook. You can download it for free. And in that cleanse, what's unique about it is we give you the whole retreat program, the Ayurvedic self-inquiry, the yoga, the breathing, the meditation. Because Kaya Kalpa, remember, that was like go into the retreat, sensory deprivation, low food, special herbs that increase stem cells. That's all in the Kaya Kalpa cleanse. So it's not the work your way through the cleanse program. It's a retreat program. So it's special for that kind of person who has the time to do that. The short home cleanse, that gives you the fasting mimicking stem cell autophagy benefits in 4 days, but it's just 4 days and you can work right through it. The Colorado cleanse, there is self-inquiry involved. We do deal with the emotions, but you can also work through it. We're not asking you to fully retreat. And that's a 2-week full-on digestive reset, detox, rebuild, and lymph cleanse as well. So there's lots of different options. We talk about that in all of our cleansing material. You can read about that. I think if you just go to lifespa.com/cleanses or something like that, you'll get to see and read up on all of our cleanses. The short home cleanse is a free ebook. It's 40 pages, tell you how to do it step by step on your own, totally free. The Kaya Kalpa cleanse, unbelievable information in there, all for free, called the Kaya Kalpa cleanse ebook. Amazing. The Colorado cleanse is too big for an ebook. It's about a 250-page book, and that book we just sell for a few dollars. And then you can also do the Colorado cleanse with us twice a year in our group cleanse, which we really sort of hold your hand and guide you through the process, and then go from there. So I think that the point of this whole thing is that we tend to go into extreme pendulum shifts in our dietary world. We have ketogenic diet saying we should eat 80% of our diet as fat, which is a little bit extreme. The only culture that ever did that are the Inuits in the Arctic Circle, and they established or expressed a gene to not let them be ketogenic for an extended period of time, suggesting that the only people on the planet that ever ate a ketogenic-ish diet, which was a man-made diet created in 1920 for epilepsy, the only group that actually did that naturally were the Inuits, and they have a gene to not let them do that. So you got to think, how good is it for us to be on a 80% fat diet for an extended period of time? No doubt there's benefits short term, and here's what I think about that. If you look at seasonal eating, and a big fan of that, we have a free monthly seasonal eating guide. You can sign up for free, get recipes, grocery list, superfood list for free every month. Why? Because at the summertime, end of summer, which it is now, you're going to see that carbs and starches are harvested. And we're going to burn sugar. I mean, just no way of getting around. The fruits and the nuts and the grains and the seeds are all being harvested now. Amylase is increasing in our bodies as part of our circadian enzymatic surge to digest those seasonal foods because we're part of those rhythms for all these years. But come springtime, we're in a way starving. That's where the intermittent fasting idea came from. And by not eating natural calorie restriction, because there's no, think about it in the spring. Where are you going to get bread? Where are you going to get starch? Where are you going to get any carbohydrate unless you stored it through the winter? But it's an austere time of the year, forcing us to go into fat burning. So I believe that we go into fat burning every spring, and that becomes our fuel, kind of burn our reserve, which is detoxifying. But come summer, we feed the system with the harvest. So we actually give the body a break. We go from fat burning to sugar burning, and we keep shifting seasonally the fuel supply. So we don't overwhelm any fuel delivery system. We now know that when you just eat sugar, you create a bunch of bugs in your gut that are super good because they had years of doing it to deliver sugar. And when they deliver sugar so well, it overwhelms our ability to handle that sugar. That is called prediabetes, type 2 diabetes. That's exactly what happens. So when you look at nature, you really study it, which is what Ayurveda is in its simplest, most authentic form. Ayurveda is an in-depth study of nature. And that's what I love about it, because when you really think about Ayurveda and really think about nature, it's not complicated. It's super easy. Now, Ayurveda was like tweaked a few things, like creating ghee to heal your gut and to flush your gallbladder, because the ghee's fat and makes your gallbladder contract and empties it for you. So you have all this bile flowing that your stomach says, oh, there's bile down there, I can make acid, and you reset function. And you do that as part of your cleanses. So I invite you to join us this fall for one of our cleanses, either the Colorado group cleanse, you can join us for that, to do a quick short home 4-day cleanse, a quick reset, or if you have time to fully retreat, look at the Kaya Kalpa cleanse. At the very least, read these ebooks. They're fascinating. The science of the ancient wisdom and the modern science, particularly with regard to the stem cell activation and autophagy that, is now documenting these ancient Ayurvedic cleanses with modern science. So please check all those out at lifespa.com. I think if you go to lifespa.com/cleanses, you'll read about them. But I've written a lot of articles. You can type in my website. You can type in Kaya Kalpa, read the Kaya Kalpa, type in short home cleanse, type in Colorado cleanse. All that stuff will come up, and you can read about it. But definitely, I think it's a really smart idea to shovel out some of that sludge from all the restaurant food, basically, and do that on a regular basis so you don't end up having to take digestive enzymes for the rest of your life because they told you just because you're old that happens. That is not true. It's not happening because you're old. It's happening because we ate bad food that broke down our digestive system. And it's not just digestion that broke down, it's detox and immune function that you don't want to find out later on. Oh, I took wheat and dairy out of my diet. I was really great, but along the way, I wasn't able to break down any of the mercury from the coal mine plumes on all the organic vegetables, and the environmental plumes were overwhelming. And now they're in my brain, and I have other issues that I did, or that my digestion is fine because I eat the super clean, restricted diet. You see what I'm saying? We didn't evolve that way. We evolved to eat a lot of different foods. That's why we're here, and the other species of humans aren't, because we had that capacity to really adapt in a major way to a very dramatic and dynamic changing environment. All right, enough said. Thanks for listening. I'm Dr. Douillard. Do you like this video? Don't forget to subscribe and share.
This recording is brought to you by LifeSpa, where ancient Ayurvedic wisdom meets modern science. Get access to free health video newsletters by Dr. John at lifespa.com. These statements have not been evaluated by the FDA. These products are not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.